guys. So we're checking out the perennial kale bed here. It's looking pretty hammered. This is the kaleidoscope perennial kale that I started growing from seed about 2 or 3 years ago. This is I think it's about its third year. So it's pretty hammered right here, and I've been starting to take cuttings of it and growing it from cuttings to keep it going. It did get pretty aphidy this summer, and I've been cutting it back and throwing a lot to the chickens. And so I want to keep, it's been a good kale, and so I want to keep it in production. So I'm going to start taking some more cuttings of it, and so that we can keep growing it out. And so it's really simple to take cuttings of kale. So we can come in here, and what I'm trying to identify is where are the offshoots. And so these kale plants are pretty large, okay? And so there's many different offshoots of them. And so what I can do is I can come in here, I'll take one here. I'm gonna cut this back pretty hard, I think. So I'm gonna try to up the kale production this year and put it in different spots. I'll leave this one. Actually, I think I'll take this one. Okay. I'll cut all these back. And notice I'm keeping like 6 inches so I can have plenty of soil contact when I plant these. We're just gonna clear these from the walkway. How about that? And we'll leave this one. I'll cut this one back. We'll leave this guy just to do what it wants to do. We'll see what happens. All right, let's visit the nursery area where I have some of these that have already been started and are growing pretty well. So here are some of the kale cuttings I started. I don't remember anymore. It was at least a couple months ago. They have gone through plenty of very hot weather. I didn't do a whole lot of due diligence keeping them super watered, and they've rooted pretty well. These look like mature kale plants here, but these were actually started from cuttings just like what we just took. And the vegetation looks very healthy here. And let's take a look over here where I have some younger ones. And I've stuck these cuttings in some water to keep them hydrated. Okay. I think this is a Jerusalem artichoke that snuck around in here. Sure is. It's been we've been moving a lot of soil around with Jerusalem artichoke, and we will feed this to the chickens. But here's some other kale cuttings I started about a month ago, and I for context here, I put these in on a pretty hot day, and they wilted. They looked like they were toast. They looked like they were going to die, and obviously they have not died. They're actually doing pretty well. And so all I did was jam them in the soil. So here I have some of those cuttings I just took, and I'm going to fill this bed up actually with these cuttings, and I'm going to transplant them out this fall and winter out onto the landscape. So I'm kind of shoving them all the way to where the leaves really start. I'm trying to get as much soil contact as possible on these things. And they have sturdy stems, so they can handle it. So I'm jamming them in there. This is a big one here. They want to live. They root very readily. And so if you have a kale plant that you really enjoy eating from and it produces well, you can clone it by taking cuttings just like this and continue the production of that kale. Most kale in a mild climate like we're in the Pacific Northwest, in a temperate climate where we don't get super cold winters usually. At least it's not cold for very long. Kale can be perennial-like in nature, but then usually what happens is it gets aphidy or whatever, something afflicts it. And taking cuttings like this is a good way to continue those genetics. So now I'll just give it a nice watering in, and I'm probably not going to water this again for like another couple weeks, or maybe a week. But I don't water this area any more frequently on a regular basis than like once a week. Usually it's more like once every 2 weeks. And so that's all I gave it, some water. Granted, I do have a pretty deep layer of mulch here to hold water in, and we'll check on these again in the winter or fall and winter before we move out the landscape, and we'll see how they did. Okay, so this is an update on the kale cuttings that I put in. We've had some pretty hot days, and I've watered in here a few times. These have been in here for about a couple weeks now, and they're doing really well. I think, yeah, they have put in roots, some roots, and yeah. So this is definitely the way to go if you have a kale that you like growing. It's way faster and way more efficient just to clone it via cuttings, unless you're trying to do some sort of breeding or diversifying genetics, which is still worth doing. But yeah, it's, as you can see, super viable. Here's some of the other cuttings I put in here. They're putting out some new growth. They're doing okay. They're gonna make it. And